Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today we're going to work in Meine Reise Durch Afrika. So, as you know, we've been doing this as a group color along on the channel. We're going to color every page, and this was the page that you guys chose. And I didn't really realize, but it is a 2-page spread. You could color them separately, but I kind of feel like, you know, our mountain kind of goes across and some of this hilly area. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and tackle the 2-page spread. So this may end up being a 2-parter. I've been known to do long color alongs, but sometimes you just got to break them up. So we'll see how far we get. I am going to use Inktense pencils. Now I haven't decided if I'm only going to use Inktense or if I am going to go ahead and add on colored pencils to the top. We'll just have to see. It'll be a surprise to you and to me. So grab your Inktense and join me. Hey guys, oh my goodness, is it good to be back? I've missed you. I feel like I haven't been around much. My life has been insane. But let's talk about what we're going to do today and why we're doing it, and then we can chat a little more. First off, housekeeping notes. If this is your first color along, there'll be a little talking head in the upper left-hand corner when I'm chatting, and most of the time I try and chat because that's what people tell me they prefer, but occasionally it just gets really long and I run out of stuff to say, and so I will set part of it to music. So if I do that, the little talking head disappears. That way, if you don't like the music, you can mute it and you don't miss anything if we start talking again. So one of the biggest questions I get asked is, why do you use Inktense if you're going to put another layer on top, whether it be Inktense itself or like a colored pencil? For me, Inktense is way faster than colored pencil. Look how fast I've laid this down. I am 2 minutes and 34 seconds into the video at this point, and in real time, that's less than 5 minutes, and I have covered almost all of the sky. And I don't have to be super precious with these strokes. You can see I don't have to be super careful about the direction of my strokes, although I do recommend going with the direction that seems most natural. But sometimes, especially when I'm doing videos, it's hard for me to turn the paper. I don't want to be twisting you guys around, so I will make more awkward movements, whereas I would suggest to you that you rotate your paper. Now, with this, I mean, I am able to fill all of the white of the paper with a color. I get that down on the paper. It serves a couple of purposes. One, you get over that anxiety of like where you're just staring at a blank page and you're almost paralyzed to start. So it helps me in that way. The second way is I have managed to do a 2-page spread in about 15 to 20 minutes longer than most of my single-page spreads. Now, this is a Rita Berman book, so it is a little smaller. So I can keep that in mind. But that being said, you can see where it's a lot faster. So what I do is I go in and I just lay down all of my base layers and get that first bit of color down on the page. And then I go back and I'm going to add some depth and dimension, in this case with Prismacolor pencils, but in other color alongs, I have done Inktense and then just did another layer of Inktense. And I think that's a good way to go too. The key to that is you never want to do back-to-back layers. So by that, I mean, let's say I wanted to use Inktense in the sky again. I need to let that completely dry. Now, dry to the touch and completely dry can be a little different. What you want to test for is when you put your hand on the paper, if it still feels cool, then you want to wait a little longer, because when it is a little damp, if you add more Inktense, you could tear your paper and you risk bleeding through to the backside. Now, if you do it one layer at a time like this and you don't get super aggressive with the water, Inktense does not bleed through. And I don't have a problem with that. If it is a really thin paper, you can use an alcohol blender. You can use like a Tombow blender. You can use rubbing alcohol like on a cotton bud. You can use a blending solution. There's a lot of different things you can do. And I talk about those. I have an entire video on Inktense on the channel. But in this case, I'm just using a water brush. I really like this one. I think it is I'll link it in the description box below. But it's one of my favorites because I find it pretty reliable in terms of how much water it puts out. If you're new to doing this, feel free to get your brush started like on your hand and make sure you got water going. And then you can kind of just tap off gently on a paper towel and then get started on your paper. And you'll find that you won't get nearly as much water, which can be very beneficial. You can always add more water, but once the water's on there, it's, it's a different subject. So anyway, that is why I use Inktense. That's why I use Neocolor, Pan Pastel, because the older I get, the harder it is for me to color an entire page just simply using colored pencil, because it takes multiple layers to get the look I'm going for. Inktense is a beautiful medium. Now, it's not quite as forgiving as, say, Pan Pastel, because while you can move it while it's wet, the minute it dries, it is basically permanent. Where people find that Inktense will reactivate is if it wasn't activated fully to begin with. So let's say that I accidentally skip a little piece of Inktense when I'm wetting it right now. If I go back over it with something wet again, if it wasn't activated the first time completely, it will reactivate. Otherwise, in my experience, it is virtually immovable. It's permanent. So that can be something that can work for you or against you depending on what you're looking for. So it's kind of like watercolor, but it doesn't have that property of being able to lift it again or move it or reblend it type of thing. But it does have the ability to layer with really nice effects. And you will see that when I add some darker shades. Now here I'm going in with my deepest green, and I'm just adding it to the base of these leaves. And then I'm going in with kind of a middle green, and I'm just flicking it up, just almost like you would blending. And I am going to leave the very tips of these uncolored. And then when I activate, I will bring those colors to the tip. And so I did 3 colors, but if you notice, I didn't go all the way to the tippy tips. And by doing that, I can get a nice blend and a gradient going from the dark at the bottom all the way up to the tips at the top. And if you start with the uncolored area and you add the water, and then you can just pull that color in. And see how I get kind of a nice, really light green, much lighter than the green, that fern green that is still there. And this is what makes it really fun to work with. Okay, I'm back. I had to help Ellie into her bed. So I really enjoy using this method of blending. And as you can see, when I go into the dark and I flick it up, it'll leave those little dark streaks. And until it dries, I can keep moving that and blending it. And you can see I kind of tap off on a paper towel to the side, because at some point you don't want to pull all that dark into your other colors, so you can kind of tap it off. So that was what I was doing here. There. Now in these little leaves, I'm going in with this kind of olivey green, and then I'm going to add a pink, and then I'm just going to simply blend it, just using water. And once again, when I do that, I am not coloring the entire tree. Do you see how I'm leaving a big open space there? This allows for that pink to go up there, and it allows room to actually blend and not overpower one of those colors. So you can see that some of these will turn out more pink, some will turn out more green, depending on what I activate first, and and how much I used. Now I'm okay with this because I'm going to go back in with my colored pencils and get a little better blend. But this definitely gets me started. And once again, I can let this completely dry and then go back in with the exact same colors or different colors and do some shading, do some blending. But I really like working in this way. But you see, each time I do this, almost every time, I go and I tap off and get the bulk of that color. And here I'm just adding where I forgot to add some pink. Now see, I didn't tap off before I went down to that pink, and it added a little green, which I'm okay with, because once again, we're going to do a lot of, additional colors. I did another page in this book using just Inktense. I didn't put any pencil over it, and I will leave a link in the description box for the playlist for the Africa book. And it is, you'll be able to tell it's a very vibrant page. But I encourage you to take a look at that if you're interested in just doing the Inktense. Now here's where I'm using Inktense to shade. I'm going into these where the artist has given me some lines, or where I feel like there's shadows. I'm going in with this saddle brown because I want to add a little bit to this tan color. But I waited until that tan was completely dry before I added this. And then you can determine how much you want to actually blend it out. Do you want to blend it completely to essentially create like a whole new color? Because you can do that. Or do you just want it to be more of a shadow, which is what I wanted to do there. Now, Mala Blue is the lightest blue that I'm going to use on this pond area, the water area. And so I'm just going in with it, and then I'll add my darker layers later. I am going to use a lot of white, so I'm not too concerned if I go over like the splashes and the bubbles, because I'm going to be using like a white Posca, and that will cover those. And so I don't have to be too finicky here if I cover over them. But you can see it's a very fast, like you don't have to get every single little space. You do want to add enough pencil. One of the mistakes I see people make with Inktense is not knowing how much to add. Some people add a lot. Like they color it like they do a colored pencil. So they're putting, like they're filling every space and making sure it's all, even, and it's this really thick layer. And the problem is then you have so much ink and nowhere for it to really go. And so you don't get the blends that you're looking for, and you don't get, it can be very overwhelming and bright because these are very intense colors. Look at how much I am using. I'm using enough to cover the page, but not so much that I'm like it looks colored like a colored pencil. And it's something that it's one of those things, it's like you really just kind of got to do it and get a feel for it, because if you don't use enough, your colors are going to look really watered out, and you really run the risk of bleeding through. Now here, notice that I activate the lighter, and as I go into the darker, I really don't want to pull that dark way into the light. And you have to be careful because those dark colors can definitely just take over your page. So you want to bring enough in to do your blend, but not so much that you lose all of your light shades. And once again, it's one of those things that as you practice, as you do it, you will get better at it. Do I still make mistakes? Absolutely. Sometimes I forget to clean off my brush and I get too much dark in. Sometimes I don't blend it good enough and I get hard lines. There's a lot of things. Like it's anything that you do in art, you are going to get better as you do it. Now here I'm activating the dark before the light, and you can see it works just fine. You just have to be careful that you're tapping your brush off in between your colors, or being conscious so that you can use those colors to blend without overpowering. So there's no right or wrong as far as going dark to light or light to dark. Same with colored pencils. I personally do both depending on the page, and sometimes within the page, depending on the element. But you can see I'm not worried about blending that blue out and getting the perfect blend at this point, because I know that I'm either going to use Inktense or a pencil to get that final blend. Now here, a lot of these kind of things, like these bushes and stuff, I am not going to spend a lot of time trying to get a 3-color blend and that kind of stuff. You certainly can. This is all about what you like, and some pages I feel like it really needs it, but especially these little sticks of grass, I don't feel like really need that. Now, I will add some different colors to these bushes as we go along with colored pencil, maybe even Inktense, I can't remember. But I guess my point is you don't have to get your final blend on your first layer of Inktense. In fact, you probably shouldn't try. Now, like in these bottom left-hand leaves, I really like how they look, and I don't do very much. But then there's other areas like this water where I'm going to do a lot more to it. So just know this is, in my mind, our base layer, and then we can move and grow from it. If we get something we really like in our base layer, fantastic. But I just don't want you to feel overwhelmed that you have to. Now, this is another choice. I could have used the exact same colors that I used on those other leaves. I chose to bring in a little bit more of a blue-green on this one. Maybe it's the same one. But then I used olivine, and I didn't put any fern in this. So these are going to look darker overall. They're not going to have that brighter yellower green in them. Here I'm adding some sepia just to the trees for shading. So once again, adding a little bit of shade with our Inktense, but not feeling like committed to it and feeling like, oh, that doesn't look right, that's wrong. Let it dry, come back in with another color, and just keep moving. Also, don't fret. At some point, I drop a little bit of green in my water, which kind of stinks because it's permanent, and there's no really fixing it other than to try and mask it a little bit, which I do. And when your whole page is done, most people that look at it won't even notice it. If they're maybe really staring at a picture or something like that, it's not like it disappears. But when you're looking at a 2-page spread, are you gonna find something the size of my pinky tip, in the page? Not usually. So try not to sweat the small stuff, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I was so annoyed with myself when it happened, but I'm not going to abandon this page. And too often I see people do that, and you're really selling yourself short, and you're selling yourself the ability to problem solve and to grow as an artist, because when you make those kind of mistakes, it forces you to try and fix it, which forces you to get out of your comfort zone. And when you get out of your comfort zone, really, that's where the magic happens, because you're now trying things that are new. And some of those things you're going to like, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I never would have done that, but I'm really glad I did. So, my advice always is keep going. Art goes through an ugly stage, almost always. Now, I'm sure there's artists out there that can create their masterpiece without an ugly stage, but I am certainly not one of them. And some of my biggest, aha moments came from desperation, trying to figure out what to do about said problem. So keep an open mind when you're working, and try not to be too hard on yourself, and just say, dang it, that happened. Let's move on. Let's keep going. And when I get back around to it, I'll try and figure something out. And that's what you got to do. So, on a personal level, while we're doing the tan, I really appreciate you guys' patience this last couple of weeks. I haven't had as many videos out. I should be getting more videos out here this weekend, and into next week. My husband's going to be gone over the weekend. I will have the house to myself, and I plan on doing a lot of recording. There's just been a lot going on with my broken leg, with a celebration of life for my uncle, with my mom having a pacemaker surgery and spending recovery for a couple of days with me, and babysitting my grandson while we got her home, and all of the things. And it's summertime, and so there's just a lot, but I feel like we're in the final stretches. The doctor says I have probably 3 to 4 more weeks until I can drive, which is killing me. But, we'll get through it, and hopefully it'll continue to work out that my daughter-in-law and my son can help me get my mom to her appointments and get me to appointments, and we can all kind of tag team and get through this. But I am looking forward to things settling down a little bit, because my life is never this busy and exciting. So it's kind of a breath of fresh air to be here at the house and just hanging out with you guys again, because I do miss chatting with you. I miss your comments. But if I don't put out videos, it's hard to get the comments. So I got to do my part, and then hope that you guys will take pity on me and mercy on me and continue to follow me and interact with me, because I absolutely love it. So, my next project is I am going to be working in the mythographic Wild Summer book, and I will put out a coloring plans video, I think, probably here in the next couple of days, along with my colored videos, or my colored pages videos, and maybe even a small art haul. I didn't do one last month because I hadn't really bought much, and I guess I bought a few things. There was a couple of things on back order and such, and so I will, some of those you've already seen. I've done flips, so I haven't been too concerned about doing the haul video, but I may try and do a haul video because everybody likes those. And then we'll just kind of go from there. I'm looking forward to moving into fall. I love fall. It's my favorite season as far as weather. It's the season of my birthday. It is, I love autumn colors. They're probably what I gravitate to most, these olivey greens and the deeper purples and like duskier turquoises and such. So I am and the oranges and reds, like the warmer ones. So I am kind of looking forward to moving into that and doing some cute Halloween stuff. I'll start probably working in that direction soon. So let me know in the comments what you guys have been up to and what you want to see some more of. And I'm going to probably put up another poll pretty soon. There's a couple of people have asked me to work in books, so I always try and respond to people's requests when I can. So, and both of the books that they chose, I'd really like to work in. So we'll take a peek at those. But I will, excuse me, but I will put up a poll, probably picking out a few pages in this book so that you guys can determine what our next color along will be. My goal is to try and get 2 out in September. So, yeah, so I'll probably do that. And I've got maybe a couple of reviews of some things coming up. And, oh yeah, I've had a request to, I don't know why I'm trying to do the coloring plans video here. Should I put the blooper reel on and be like, shut up, Wendy? Yeah, okay, I will. So anyway, a lot of what I'm doing on screen, I've already really kind of talked about. I am just activating it all, letting it dry, and then moving on. So one of the things I like to do while I'm working in the Africa book, in case this is a newer one for you, is I like to talk about things having to do with Africa. And so I will read things like whatever the subject matter is. So like in this case, we're talking about elephants, or we're looking at elephants. And so I did pull up some elephant facts. So we'll kind of dive into that. So as I go along here, one of the things that I want to say about the sky, generally speaking, if you look at the sky is darker up high and then lighter as it goes to the horizon. For whatever reason, I did mine the opposite way on this page. So keep that in mind if you want to change it. If you want to do it like I did, totally okay with that too, because, you know, we are the boss of our coloring books. So there is no right or wrong. But I just want to point that out because when I was looking at this page, I was a little annoyed with myself for doing that. And I'm not even sure why I did that. But, so anyway, think about that as we chat about elephants. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that there are 3 different types of elephants. There's African elephants. Do I have the page up that talks about that? No, of course not. Let me get that up. Apologies. I have like all kinds of things open so that I can talk about different elephant facts. 3 types. So I do know that there's the African elephant, which is the largest elephant species. It's the African savanna elephant. The African forest elephant, which is a smaller species, and they recognized it as its own species in the year 2000, and then the Asian elephant. So we'll talk about those as we go along. For example, the African elephant, its ears are shaped almost like the continent of Africa. You know, they have the really big ears. So the smaller eared elephants are the Asian elephants. Both male and female African elephants are capable of growing tusks, whereas in Asian elephants, the females will grow tusks, but they're very short. They barely get past the lip line. African elephants are significantly bigger. They're like between 4,000 kilograms and 7,000 kilograms, whereas the weight of Asian elephants is 3,000 kilograms to 6,000 kilograms. So I'm going to pause and do some calculations, math. Okay, so I did the math via Google. So you don't have to worry that you're getting bad advice. A kilogram's like 2.2 pounds. And so 4,000 to 7,000 is roughly, let's just say, over 8,000 to 15,000 pounds. That is a lot. Whereas the Asian elephant is, maybe 6,500 to 13,000 pounds. So, just little babies. It's crazy that we're talking about 13,000 pounds as being small. But they have different toenails. The African forest elephants have 5 in the front and 4 in the back. African bush have 4 in the front and 3 in the back. And the Asians have 5 in the front and 4 in the back. So the trunk on an African elephant has 2 fingers, they say, for grasping, whereas the trunk on an Asian elephant only has 1 quote-unquote finger. So that's kind of interesting. And the African elephants are about 4 meters tall, and the Asians are about 3.5 meters tall. And the African elephants are pretty consistently like a consistent dark pigmentation, whereas the Asian ones are a little more freckled or speckled. So I thought that was kind of interesting. African elephants also have skin that's a little looser and looks a little more wrinkled. So those are some of the things that you can maybe distinguish between the two. I guess I never really thought about their, like when you think of monkeys, you just naturally know that there's like all kinds of different monkeys. When I think of elephants, I tend to think of them as being one, and not necessarily that there are different species, but of course there are. Okay, so let's dive into some fun little facts, some of which you will know, some of which you won't. Let me know, what is the most wild fact that you learned today? So elephants are the largest of all land animals in the world. It takes a female 22 months from conception to have a baby. This is longer than any other animal in the world. So imagine that for 2 years almost, you are pregnant. Yeah. I don't know how many moms would be like, yeah, I wish that was me. A newborn elephant can stand up shortly after being born, and they can weigh up to 260 pounds. Wow. Like, just take that in for a minute. 260 pounds? Are you kidding me right now? Just a tiny little thing. Just a wee babe. Okay. The average lifespan for an elephant in the wild is from 50 to 70 years. The oldest known elephant in the world lived to be 82 years old. The heaviest elephant in the world weighed 26,000 pounds. Wow, that is crazy. You know what else weighs 26,000 pounds? A school bus. Or 12 Honda Civics. Or 12 Holstein cows. Wait a minute, it would be 10 Holstein cows. You know, the math. But still, that is just crazy to me. Enormous animals. It's only a myth that elephants are afraid of mice. So there's a lot of cartoons that depict elephants afraid of mice. I think part of why they maybe depicted that way is because, you know, they could be scared by things that move really quickly, and mice do. Pure speculation on my part. The trunk of an elephant has more than 150,000 muscles and tendons in it. That is pretty crazy to think about too. Elephants are herbivores. They eat a lot of different kinds of plants, mostly eating leaves, bark, fruits of trees, and shrubs. So once again, on the page, I have used those same green combinations we used before, and I'm adding in the darker at the bottom and the lighter in the middle, and I'm tapping off so as to not get too much dark there in the center. And so this is just a way that I find works really well for blending for me. Now I can take that light into that dark, but see how that power overpowered it? Well, then if you take and before it dries, you keep moving it down and you tap off and move it down and tap off, you can remove some of that dark as well. So don't be afraid to play around with it while it's wet. Okay, elephants have an excellent sense of smell and hearing, but very poor eyesight. Generally, one tusk will be shorter than the other. This is because the elephant will use it more often for things. Just like people are either right-handed or left-handed, these animals tend to be have a dominant tusk. So that kind of makes sense. The tusk of an elephant can weigh up to 200 pounds and can grow up to 10 feet in length. That is crazy to me too. At 11 pounds, the elephant has a brain that is larger than any other animal in the world, which, well, duh. I mean, it's the biggest animal. So that's kind of an interesting fact. For up to 16 hours a day, an elephant can be found feeding on a variety of plant life. They can consume from 300 to 600 pounds of food every single day, which is why I don't own an elephant. I thought about it, but then thought, nah. Baby elephants are born blind at birth and rely on their trunks and their mothers to help them. Most elephants in zoos, working and in the circus, are females, as they are easier to control. Males tend to go through cycles where they're instinctively aggressive. Males enter stages referred to as Males enter stages referred to as must where they are. I have no idea what this sentence is. They say that they're in a state of madness for a short period of time. So they enter into a stage of madness. Okay. Females can continue to have offspring until they're about 50 years old. They tend to have a new baby every 2.5 to 4 years, and twins are extremely rare. Which, thank the Lord, can you imagine that poor mama having to have two 260-pound babies? I get that they're big, but still. Elephants are known to have a type of tuberculosis which can be transferred to humans. This is why those that work closely with them have to get a vaccination to prevent it. I did not know that at all. Never even heard anything like that. Reproduction can take place any time of the year for elephants as long as they feel secure and have plenty of food. It is something that will reoccur regularly. So I guess much like humans, right? We don't have seasons like, say, antelope or elk. Elephants can hold up to 4 gallons of water in their trunks at one time. Now, I did read, what was interesting to me is that they don't actually use their trunk as a straw. They hold the water in their trunk and then they pour it into their mouth. They use their trunk like a glass and then pour it into their mouth. So I thought that was kind of interesting because without really thinking about it, I guess I just assumed it was more like a straw. The back part of elephants' ears are called knuckles, and it's known as the softest part of their body. Okay, so back to on screen. What I'm doing here is Prismacolor has the best grays. They just have a really nice set of grays, and so I wanted to use those. Inktense has some grays, but I felt like they would make my elephant darker than I wanted it to be. I wanted my elephants to be really light with really dark shadows. And so I just decided I wasn't going to use Inktense at all on the elephant. So both elephants are colored just with Prismacolor, and I pretty much used the whole spectrum, working their way down from the darkest here and then working back into the lightest colors, or the, 10%, 30%, 50%, 70%. I'm sure you knew what I was trying to say, even if I couldn't spit it out. But I'm just working back and forth from the darkest to the lightest and then probably back to the darkest again, just to kind of blend it all out. But I really didn't want my overall elephant to be super dark. So that's why I chose to do it this way. You could certainly use Inktense if you would prefer. Okay. This says African elephants are usually about 10 feet tall and weighed 8 to 16,000 pounds. We discussed that earlier. And Asian elephants are around 9 feet tall and weigh 6,000 to 13,000 pounds. So once again, already touched on that. So when elephants greet each other, they twine their trunks together. That's kind of cool. It's like they hold hands. An elephant heart weighs between 27 and 46 pounds. Male elephants leave their family around the age of 14 years old. Oh, well, I know some teenage boys that you want to kick out at 14, but it still seems a little young to me. Female elephants live tight-knit lives with their families, while the male elephants are more on the introverted side and live most of their lives by themselves. I don't think that's truly uncommon in a lot of animals. There's a lot of animals that get together and mate, and then the mom takes care of them and dad's off. So I don't think that's super rare. Elephants are the only mammal incapable of jumping or leaving the ground, which once again is pretty understandable. If I had to have 26,000 pounds off the ground, or even 16,000, yeah, I don't think I'd be doing any of that either. But that being said, they can run up to 25 miles an hour, which is crazy. Now, I did see something earlier that said more common is more around 15 miles an hour, but still 15 miles an hour is way faster than we can run. So that's pretty insane to think about it. Elephants eat or drink up to 160 liters of water every day and eat up to 50 tons of food each year. Elephants are able to hear sound waves way below human hearing range, and they can hear sounds as low as 9 hertz. So I have no idea how far down 9 hertz is, but okay. Baby elephants or calves sometimes suck their trunks in like human babies suck their thumbs. Oh, that's so cute. And then they have like a link to watch babies sucking their trunks. Elephants throw mud and sand over themselves to protect themselves from the hot sun. I guess so they don't get sunburned, huh? Elephants dig water holes and create footpaths for themselves. Female elephants can have babies until they're in their 50s. Baby elephant. Okay, so here they're contradicting themselves because it says baby elephants usually weigh around 48 pounds. So is this for the Asian elephant, or is the other one telling us how, like, the largest baby was 260 pounds? I don't know. I'm a little confused. When elephants swim, they use their trunk as a snorkel. Elephants only sleep 2 to 3 hours a day. Now that's kind of crazy, but if you're going to eat 16 hours a day, and believe me, elephants poop a lot too, if you're going to do all that, I guess that takes up a lot of time. Elephants' eyelashes are pretty long. In fact, they can measure up to 5 inches in length. Elephants make purring noises, much like cats do. Oh, here's a video. Let's see if you can hear it. I don't know, dude, that sounds like the wind. Elephant skin is highly sensitive and over an inch thick and loaded with nerve endings. The oldest elephant to live was an Asian elephant named Lin Wang that died at the age of 86. Elephants show similar emotions like humans do. If a member of their herd dies, they show sadness and grieve the loss of their family members long after they have passed away. I have even heard, or I read somewhere in my elephant research, that they're also known to bury their dead, which is kind of crazy. They didn't go into how that is accomplished, but that's kind of cool. Elephants have 4 molars, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom of their mouth. Each molar weighs about 5 pounds each. They can only grow 6 sets of molars over their lifetime. And when you're eating 50 tons of food a year, I would imagine they're going to need all 6 sets. An elephant's tusks continue to grow through their life. An adult male tusk grows about 7 inches every year. Elephants wave their trunks to help them smell better. Elephants are able to identify themselves in a mirror. So that's cool. They've got some self-awareness. The most expensive coffee brands in the world make coffee from the droppings of Thai elephants. Okay, I don't think I needed to know that, and I will never drink Thai coffee again. Not a huge drinker of coffee, so this doesn't crush me, but elephants are actually very terrified of bees, which, considering that they really don't have a lot of enemies, because like lions and hyenas, maybe, I'm sure there's probably another one that I'm not thinking of, they'll prey on the babies. But think about it, like, who has a chance against a humongous elephant? Not a lot, huh? Elephants use their ears to radiate excess heat away from their bodies. They use their trunks to make loud noises or trumpets to scare away enemies. An elephant's trunk is sensitive enough to pick up a blade of grass. And, okay, so back to the picture. I don't know why I just went ahead and did this path in gray. I wish I wouldn't have colored this little piece right here brown, because it was really hard to cover over in gray. But I'm just using this to kind of shade the side of the path. Okay, back to our facts here. An elephant's trunk is sensitive enough to pick up a blade of grass, but strong enough to rip branches off a tree. That's pretty cool if you think about it. The word elephant comes from the Greek word elephas, which means ivory. Probably for their tests. Elephants don't like peanuts. Now, come on. Now they're just destroying my childhood. Because Dumbo liked peanuts. Male elephants usually leave the matriarch group when they're 12 to 15, but not all males are loners. Some will live in an all-male group. So, when my son Marco was born, or not born, but when he was younger, he loved the Dumbo movie and wanted to watch it over and over and over. My older son, Nathan, preferred the movie The Jungle Book. So, needless to say, as any parent knows, a child gets fixated on one movie and you will watch that until you as a parent is ready to lose your mind. All right. Elephants can detect sounds with their feet, and they can detect deep-pitched sounds that vibrate through the ground. So maybe like cars and stuff, and herds of animals. African elephants can detect water sources from up to 12 miles away. Wow. That's crazy to think about. 12 miles? Wow. I wonder, like, can they smell it? Is that what they're saying? It says detect, not smell. But I have questions. All right. Research studies have been done where they found out that elephants can identify a person's gender and age based on the sound of their voice. Okay, how is the elephant conveying this information to you? This whole thing has left me with questions. Elephants can identify others based on how they smell. Now, that doesn't surprise me. I had a friend when I was in that I knew that was blind, and he could determine based on smell, the rhythm of your walk, a lot of different things, who people were before they announced themselves. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that elephants can do this, but I'm like, how are they telling people that they can do this? Like, what's the indicator? Especially gender and age based on voice. Okay. Elephants take regular mud baths to protect their skin from the hot sun and insect bites. Many animals do that. Elephants sometimes comfort their distressed friends by stroking them with their trunks. Elephants don't usually have any predators besides lions that will attack. Usually the young and weak. I think hyenas do it too. African elephants are a vulnerable species, while the Asian elephants are an endangered species. Elephant brains have more complex folds than that of other animals, which makes them one of the most intelligent animals on the planet. Elephants have developed a hippocampus, which is in the region of the brain that controls emotions and spatial awareness. So that's really cool. An elephant in the zoo in Korea has learned to mimic commands zookeepers gave it and has learned 8 words and their context. Elephants have been known to induce their own labor by self-medicating with plants. Okay. It's amazing. Animals are truly amazing. Male elephants court female elephants by using rituals involving different affectionate gestures and nuzzles. Well, I can get behind that. Once a baby is born, mothers will have several babysitters to take care of their calf so she has time to eat and produce enough milk for her baby. To protect the babies, adult elephants will cover baby elephants in sand as they sleep to protect them from the sun. If an elephant herd comes across a lone elephant who has died, they will still grieve or show respects to it. Which, if you think about that, that's really amazing because I don't know many other species of animals that do that. Elephants sleep standing up. Elephants will avoid eating a type of acacia tree. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Because many ants live in these trees and they don't want to get ants in their sensitive trunks. Oh, imagine that. Like if you got an ant in there, that would be terrible. Female and male African elephants have tusks, but only the male Asian have tusks. We talked about that a little bit. Elephants can recognize other elephants' carcasses. Elephants breathe through their trunks 80% of the time. Elephants' sweat glands are between their toenails. Okay. When an elephant loses their last set of molars, they will eventually die because they cannot eat. Well, it's sad that they only get 6 sets. And do they know? Do they know they're on their last set? Elephants' feet are covered in a soft padding that helps support their weight. This padding gives them the ability to walk almost silently, even though they are humongous. Elephants can lift up to 770 pounds with their trunk. That is crazy. That is crazy. I'm not even going to attempt the math to figure something like that out. Baby elephants can't use their trunk right away because they have no muscle tone. A herd of elephants often walk in a single file. Some elephants can swim for 6 hours without rest. Elephants are considered the strongest mammal on the planet. Elephants can hear each other's calls from 5 miles away. So they can detect water 12 miles away and hear each other 5 miles away. Elephants are considered a keystone species, meaning that they play a crucial role in their ecosystem by shaping the landscape and providing habitat for other animals. Now, here in these clouds, I'm just adding blue to the lower part of the cloud. So this lower area, and then I'm going to keep the top part of the cloud white. So that's what I'm essentially doing here. See, that is a prime example of what happens if you don't tap off your pencil, because not only did it make the brown, look how brown it made it, but now that blue is actually green. So, feeling thwarted by my efforts, I decide to move on. I will be back to the clouds for sure. But I decided I was going to do it with a colored pencil. So, okay. Some baby elephants may continue to take milk from their mother for almost 3 years. Elephants become fully independent by the age of 8. Asian elephants are found in Southeast and South Asia, and African elephants are found in the sub-Saharan Africa, which I heard is like, I thought I read that they were on 37 countries, but I won't swear to that. The matriarch of the herd will usually teach young ones on how to behave with other elephants. They are also responsible for remembering where the best places are to shelter and to find food and water. Male elephants usually take no responsibility in raising their young ones. Elephants have saggy or loosely fit skin. This helps keep moisture trapped underneath, allowing the body to stay cool. There are 8 major muscles on each side of the elephant's trunk. Elephants' hair growth reduces over time, and it is found over their entire body. Herds of elephants roam through 37 different countries in the continent. Yes, I did read that. Thank you. Herds of elephants may contain up to 100 family members. So, the elephant trunk serves as a nose, a hand, an extra foot, a signaling device, a tool for gathering food, siphoning water, dusting, digging, and much more. Elephants have a slow pulse. It only pulses 27 pulses per minute, which by contrast, a canary's does 1,000 per minute. Elephants have been known to learn more than 60 commands. Elephants only digest about 50% of their food, which is why you see them pottying a lot. Okay, we can't leave on that fact, can we? That would be poopy. Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. The one thing I did want to share is, like, let's say a lion was trying to get a baby elephant. The elephants will circle the baby to protect him or her, which I thought was really cool. I saw that on, I don't know, probably like a National Geographic special or something like that. But, you know, animals are really cool. And I enjoy learning about them. So I hope you enjoyed those facts about elephants. Now, a couple of things that I tried to buy some books on like African folklore or fairy tales. And a lot of their stories are really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and read one. And then please let me know in the comments, because they're not exactly what we think of. So this one's called The Partnership of the Elephant and the Rabbit, which I thought was kind of fitting. So once upon a time, a rabbit and an elephant, coming from different ways, met on a road, and being old friends, stopped to greet one another and chat about the weather and crops and exchange opinions about trade. Finally, the rabbit proposed that the elephant should join him in a partnership to go on a little trading trip to some shepherds. I hear there are some good chances to make a profit among them. Cloth, I'm told, is very scarce there, and I think we might find a good bargain awaiting us. The elephant was delighted and accepted the offer of his little friend. 2 bales of goods were prepared for the journey. They set out on good terms with each other, and the rabbit, with his many experiences, amused the elephant greatly. By and by, the friends arrived at the river, and the elephant, to whom the water was agreeable, stepped in to cross it, but halted on hearing the rabbit exclaim, "Why, elephant, you're surely not going to cross without me. Are we not partners?" "Of course we're partners, but I did not agree to carry you or your pack. Why don't you step right in? The water's not that deep. It scarcely covers my feet." "But you stupid fellow," says the rabbit, "can you not see what will scarcely cover your feet is more than enough to drown me? And I can't swim a bit. And besides, if I get my fur wet, I shall catch the ague," which I think is like a cold. "And however am I to carry my pack across?" "Well, I can't help with that," replied the elephant. "It was you who proposed to take the journey, and I thought a wise fellow like you would have known there were rivers running across the road." Excuse me, I should say. "And that you knew what to do. If you cannot travel, then goodbye. I cannot stop here all day." And the elephant walked across to the other side. "Surly rascal," muttered the rabbit. "All right, my big friend, I will pay you for it some time." Not far off, however, the rabbit found a log, and after placing his pack on it, he paddled himself over and reached the other bank safely. But to his grief, he found out that his bale had been wetted and damaged. The rabbit wiped the water off as much as possible and resumed the journey with the elephant, which had looked carelessly on the efforts of his friend across the river. Fortunately for the rabbit, there were no more wide streams to be crossed. The journey did not present such difficulties, and they arrived in due time among the shepherds. Now, a trade, the elephant was not to be compared with the rabbit, for he could not talk so pleasantly as the rabbit, and he was not at all sociable. The rabbit went among the women and laughed and joked with them and said so many funny things that they were delighted with him. And when at the last question came up, a chief's wife was so kind to him that she gave him a mighty fine cow in exchange for his little bale of cloth. The elephant, in the meantime, went among the men and simply told them that he had come to buy cattle with cloth. The shepherds did not like his appearance nor his manner, and said he had no cattle to sell, but if he cared to have it, they would give him a year-old heifer for his bale. Though the elephant's bale was a very heavy one, and many times more valuable than the rabbit's, yet as he was so gruff and ugly, he was at last obliged to be satisfied with the little heifer. Just as they had left the shepherds to return home, the elephant said to the rabbit, "Now mind we should meet anyone on the road and be asked whose cattle these are, I wish you to oblige me by saying that they are mine, because I should not like people to believe that I am not as good a trader as you are. They will also be afraid to touch them if they know they belong to me. But if they hear they belong to you, every fellow will think he has a good right to them as you have, and you dare not protect your property." Very well, replied the rabbit. I quite understand. In a little while, as the rabbit and elephant drove their cattle along, they met many people coming from market who stopped and admired them and said, "Ah, what a fine cow is that! To whom does it belong?" "It belongs to me," answered the thin voice of the rabbit. "The little one belongs to that big elephant." "Very fine indeed. A good cow that," replied the people and passed on. Vexed and annoyed, the elephant cried angrily to the rabbit, "Why did you not answer as I told you? Now mind, do as I tell you at the next meeting with the strangers." By and by, they met another party going home with fowls and palm wine, who, when they came upon, said, "Ah, that is a fine beast, and a prime order. Whose is it?" "It is mine," quickly replied the rabbit, "and the little scabby heifer belongs to the elephant." The answer enraged the elephant, who said, "What an obstinate little dunce you are! Did you not hear me ask you to say that it was mine? Now you remember you're to say next time, or I leave you to find your own way home, because I know you are a horrible little coward." "Very well, I'll try and think of it next time," replied the rabbit in a meek voice. In a short time, they met another crowd of people who stopped when opposite to them and said, "Really, that is an exceedingly fine cow. To which of you does it belong?" "It is mine. Bought it from the shepherds," replied the rabbit. The elephant was so angry this time, he broke away from the rabbit and drove his little heifer by another road. To the animals in the forest, he remarked that a fine, fat cow was being driven by the cowardly little rabbit along the other road. He did this out of mere spite, hoping that someone of them would be tempted to take it by force from the rabbit. But the rabbit was wise. He had seen the spite in the elephant's face as he went off, and was sure that he would play him some unkind trick. And as night was falling and his home was far, he knew there were many vagabonds laying in wait to rob poor travelers. The rabbit knew that if his wit failed to save him, he would be in great danger. True enough, it was not long before the big blustery lion rose from the side of the road and cried out, "Hello, you there! Where are you going with that cow? Come, speak out." "Oh, is that you, lion?" said the rabbit. "I'm taking it to Mugasa," who was the deity, "who is about to give a feast to all of his friends, and he told me to particularly invite you to share it if I should meet you." "Eh? What? To Mugasa? Well, I am proud to have met you, rabbit. As I am not otherwise engaged, I will accompany you, because everyone considers it an honor to wait upon Mugasa." They proceeded a little further, and a bouncing buffalo came up and bellowed fiercely, "You, rabbit, stop! Where are you taking that cow?" "Oh, I'm taking it to Mugasa. Don't you know? How would a little fellow like me have the courage to go so far from home, if it were not that I am in the service of Mugasa? I am charged also to tell you, buffalo, that if you would like to join in the feast Mugasa is about to give, he will glad to have you as a guest." "Oh, well, that is good news indeed," said the buffalo. "I will come along now, rabbit, and I'm very glad to have met you. How do you do, lion?" A short distance off the party, they met a huge rogue elephant, which stood in the middle of the road, and in a tone which required a quick answer, demanded to know where the cow was being taken. "Now, elephant, get out of the way," said the rabbit. "This cow is being taken to Mugasa, who will be angry with you if I am delayed. Have you not heard of the feast he is about to give? By the by, as you are one of the guests, you might as well help me to drive this cow and let me get on your back, for I am dreadfully tired." "Well, that is grand," said the elephant. "I shall be delighted to feast with Mugasa, and come, get on my back. I will carry you with pleasure." "And rabbit," whispered the elephant as he lifted him by his trunk, don't forget to speak a good word for me to Mugasa." Soon a leopard and then a hyena were met, but seeing such a powerful crowd behind the cow, they became very calm and were invited to accompany the rabbit's party to the Mugasa feast. It was quite dark by the time they arrived at the rabbit's village, and the gate stood 2 dogs, which were the rabbit's chums, and they barked furiously, but hearing the friend's voice, they came up and welcomed the rabbit. The party halted, and the rabbit, after reaching the ground, whispered to the dogs how affairs stood, and the dogs wagged their tails approvingly and yapped with fun as they heard of the rabbit's wit. I am so sorry, y'all. I am exhausted. It did not take long for the dogs to understand what was required of them, and one of them returned with a pretended message from the great Mugasa. Well, my friends, do you hear what Mugasa says? Cried the rabbit, with a voice of importance. The dogs are to lay mats inside the village by the gate, and the cow is to be killed, and the meat prepared nicely and laid on the mats. And when this is done, Mugasa himself will come and give each of his portion. He says that you are all very welcome. Now listen to me before I go into Mugasa, and I will show you how you can help to hurry the feast, for I am sure you are all anxious for it to begin. You, hyena, must kill the cow and dress the meat, and the dogs will carry it in and lay it on the mats. But remember, if a bit is touched before Mugasa commands, we are all ruined. You, elephant, must take this brass hatchet of Mugasa's and split wood nicely for the hearth. Buffalo, go and find wood with a smooth bark which burns well and bring it to the elephant. Leopard, go to the banana plantation and watch for the falling leaf and catch it with your eyelids in order that we may have proper plates. Lion, my friend, go and fill this pot from the spring and bring water that Mugasa may wash his hands. Having issued his instructions, Rabbit went strutting into the village, but after he had gone a little way, he darted aside and, passing through the side door, went out and crept towards an ant hill. On the top was a tuft of grass, and from his hiding place he commanded a view of the gate and all who might come near it. Now the buffalo could find only one log with smooth bark, and the dog shouted out to the buffalo that one log was not enough to roast or boil the meat, and he returned to hunt up some more. The elephant struck the log with his brass hatchet, which was broken at the first blow, and there was nothing else in which to cut the wood. The leopard watched and watched for falling leaves, but failed to see any. The lion's pot had a hole in the bottom, and he could never keep it full, though he tried ever so many times. Meanwhile, the hyena, having killed the cow and dressed the meat beautifully, said to the dogs, Now, my friends, the meat is ready. What shall I do? You can help us carry the meat in and lay it on the mats if you'd like, for Mugasa must see it before anybody can touch it. Ah, but I feel extremely hungry, and my mouth waters, so that I am sick with longing. May we not go shares and eat a little bit? It looks very nice and fat, whined the hyena. Ah, no, we shall not dare to do such a thing. We have long ago left the woods and its habits, and we are unfit for anything but human society. But if you were allowed to eat any, you could fly into the woods, and we should have all the blame. No, come, help us carry it inside. You will not have long to wait. The hyena was obliged to obey, but contrived to hide in the grass some of the tripe. The rabbit from behind his tuft of grass saw it all and winked in the dark. When the meat was in, the dog said, It is all right now. Just stay outside until the other fellows arrive. The hyena retired, and when he was outside of the gate, searched for his tripe and lay down quietly to enjoy it. But as he was about to bite it, the rabbit screamed, Ah, you thief hyena, you thief! I see you. Stop, thief. Mugasa is coming. These cries so alarmed the hyena, he dropped his tripe and fled away as fast as his legs could carry him. And the others, the buffalo, elephant, lion, leopard, tired out with waiting and hearing these alarming cries, also ran away, leaving the rabbit and his dog friends in quiet possession. They carried the tripe into the village and closed the gate and barred it, after which they laughed long and loud, and the rabbit rolling on the ground over and over with the fun of it all. The rabbit was the smallest of all, but his wisdom he was more than a match for the two elephants, the buffalo, the leopard, and the lion, the hyena, and all. Even his friends the dogs had to confess that the rabbit's wit could not be matched. Now here I'm going in with colored pencil to blend out my water, because when we used our Inktense, it left us a little streaky. And there you see my little green blob right in the middle. how annoying that little blob is. But it's okay. It's all going to be okay. But basically, I'm using these darker colors and just kind of going in and laying in my dark tones and then blending them out lightly and adding the next layers and moving on until I've gotten to my lightest colors. Now, the more colors you use in your blend, the more smooth the gradient will be. It's really hard to blend 3 starkly different colors like our sky blue light to the Copenhagen blue. So we need those colors in between to help blend it. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just adding in those colors. Now I wanted to put in, I want this to look kind of ripply, and so I'm just adding those little streaks in, and then I'm going to go back and add in white and really use the white to create the ripple. But I want a little bit of contrast, so I want some darker shades there. And you'll notice that I'm not using Prismacolor over the entire thing. So like in this case, I am simply deepening up my shadows a little bit and then blending it out a little, but I'm not adding much more. So you don't have to go over your entire picture, and that's where the time saving is. But you can if you want to. I mean, this is your picture, and you can, it depends on the look that you want. Some people like the look of all pencil over the top. And the advantage you have with the Inktense is you filled in all of the white of the paper without eliminating much of the tooth. So you can add those other layers. And when you use lighter colors over Inktense, so like if I were to use a cream or something like that, those bottom layers can kind of pop through. And so you kind of get the best of both worlds there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up our story. At the end, it says Thoughts of Africans. And these are the lines they said. There are 3 friends in this world: courage, sense, and insight. A person prepared beforehand is better than after reflection. The day on which one starts is not the time to commence one's preparation. Lack of knowledge is darker than night. An ignorant man is always a slave. Whoever works without knowledge works uselessly. And trade is not something imaginary or descriptive, but something real and profitable. So let me know what you think of these kind of stories. Do you want me to read more of them? Because some of them are a little more obscure than this one, but it is kind of interesting to hear them. So I really like the look of pink and yellow together. I love the peachy color it makes, and I did use the Deco Peach, but here I'm just darkening the center of the flowers with the pink. You could definitely leave these just pink if you wanted to. You could leave them all yellow. You could do all the flowers in one color. I just really like this combination. I like the pink, I like the yellow, and then I like the pink with the yellow blended to where you get that nice peachy color with some of that yellow kind of popping through. And here I'm just kind of blending it out a little bit with flicking motions. I'm not trying to blend every flick out, but I am trying to soften it to where it doesn't look like I've just, ran some streaks through it. See, this is the hardest part for me. This is a 2-hour video. 2 hours is a long, long time to chat about things that really, there isn't a whole lot to say here. I'm adding jasmine over the yellow flower. Like, you know, I don't think I'm going to woo you with my, you know, big tips here. I bought another book, and it's like folk tales, and quite honestly, they're very different. So I'm not sure. Maybe I should read one of those as well. Okay, I'm back, and I think I found a good one. This one's called The Ring of the King. It says, once there was a king with a ring. In that ring lay the secret of his power and greatness. The ring was made of gold, brought up the river Nile, inlaid with silver, brought up the river Congo, and topped with diamonds, brought up the river Zambezi. So the story went, though exactly where it had come from, no one was sure. The ring was so powerful that whoever wore it was protected from all mortal danger. That meant no matter how many people came charging around the corner, waving spears and axes or shooting arrows, the king could never get hurt, provided, of course, he was wearing the ring. So the king wore the ring at all times, while passing judgment in his court, while eating stupendous feasts that lasted all day, while being carried on a special sort of bed covered with ostrich feathers throughout the streets of his city, and even while sleeping in the royal bedchamber at night. The king wore the magic ring every hour of every day, except when he went for a ceremonial bath. On these occasions, the king was carried to a crystal clear pool beside the waterfall. There all of his servants and his children and his many wives bowed low to him, and he then backed way out of sight. Once they had left, the king would take off his crown of gold and ivory and peacock feathers, his cloak of gold and silk and precious stones, his sandals of ebony and rhinoceros hide, and his robe of the purest white linen. And then he would take off his ring and hide it in a place so secret and well concealed that not his servants nor his children nor any of his many wives could make the slightest guess as to where it was. As soon as he had finished his royal bath, the ring was the first thing the king put on before he allowed anyone to come anywhere near him. He treasured the ring because it made him the most powerful king in Africa. But the day arrived when he stepped dripping out of his ceremonial bath and into the warm sun to find that the ring was not there. At first with amazement and then with fear, the king searched his secret hiding place and all around it. The ring was gone. Somebody among his servants and his children and many wives must have discovered the hiding place and dared to take the ring. The king was furious, but he was also afraid. If he offered great rewards for finding the ring, then everyone would know that he no longer had it. They would know that he was no longer protected from harm, and they would know he was no longer the most powerful king in Africa. For days the king sat worried. He paced up and down his private chamber. He sat for hours staring at the ground or the sky. He couldn't sleep. All of his wives shook their heads in sorrow, and his children kept well away. It was his favorite wife who persuaded him to tell her what was wrong. Immediately she went to the house of the wisest of all the diviners, a man called Mufasa. With wild eyes and bracelets dangling on his arm, Mufasa sprang into the courtyard where the king was sitting. Plumes of feathers danced and waved in his headdress, and strips of furry skin dangled from his waist. He looked like a feathered leopard with 100 tails. He listened silently while the king explained about the stolen ring. Then Mufasa opened one of the leather pouches that hung from his beaded belt, took out a set of bones that he used to find the answers to difficult questions. Smoothing a circle in the sand, Mufasa held the bones towards the sky, gave a sharp cry, and then dropped them. Carefully examined the pattern in which they lay. Then Mufasa straightened up and looked right at the king. "Your ring will be found, Your Majesty. The thief is close to us." "Well, who is it?" demanded the king. Mufasa shook his head. "You shall see. You will not need magic. Send for your woodcutters." The king did so at once, and Mufasa explained to them what was needed. At dawn on the next day, all those who could possibly have had the slightest chance to steal the ring were gathered into the great square in front of the palace. The king appeared at the top of the steps leading down from the front door and stood there, silently staring at the bowing people. Then he clapped his hands, and soldiers appeared all around the square, ready and armed with sharpened spears so no one could escape. Through a small archway appeared Mufasa, all the more terrible now, with white circles around each eye and strange dark designs on his body. After him came the woodcutters with great numbers of straight wooden sticks. They heaped the sticks in the center of the square. Mufasa danced around the sticks, chanting in a language nobody had heard before, and it was clear to even the smallest child that he was casting a spell on the sticks. Finally, at the king's command, everyone in the square was given one stick. "Take care," thundered Mufasa. "These sticks are full of power. Do not lose them. Have them with you throughout the day. Bring them back here tomorrow at dawn. As the sun rises, we shall see what we see." Sticks of power. All the people were amazed. The sticks looked so ordinary. They compared sticks with each other. They all looked just the same. A few were a little thicker or thinner, but they were all the same length. In fact, they were all exactly the same length. How curious. The guards moved aside, and the servants, children, and wives were allowed to leave, shuffling backwards, of course, for no one ever turned a back on the king. So they all saw the king beckoning with his finger to his favorite wife. As she knelt before him, he whispered in her ear, "The thief is as good as caught. The stick will catch him. This night the stick of the thief will grow in the length by the breadth of 3 fingers. But don't tell anyone I said so." As he strode into the carved doorway, all the wives, children, and servants crowded around the favorite wife to find out what the king had said. Now, the favorite wife was a very careful woman. She didn't breathe a word to any of them except her own extra special friend. That friend was a trustworthy woman, too, and she told only her mother and her wise old aunt. But the strange thing was that by the time the sun set that evening, every single person who had been in the square knew that by dawn, the thief's stick would have grown in length by the breadth of 3 fingers. Night came as swiftly and silently as it always did. When the first tinges of dawn showed that the night was over, the crowd gathered in the square, and they all had their sticks. The sun crept up in the sky, and suddenly here was Mufasa, a gleaming spear in his hand, glaring at the people. The king appeared, being carried on a special traveling bed with ostrich feathers. Now here I am just going over the black lines with the white Prisma, and it just kind of softens them and makes it look a little more snow-like, right? And I'm just using just pencils to add a little shadow and shading, much like I did with the, what was it, saddle or something like that, that kind of brownish color there. So I'm just kind of smoothing things out here. So so the king appeared, being carried on his special traveling bed with ostrich feathers. Beside him he walked the chief builder in the kingdom, bearing his measuring rod. Stick after stick was measured all the way around the square. Not one of them had grown so much as a fingernail in length, but there was one stick, carried by a sweating servant with a shifty look in his eyes, that was exactly the thickness of 3 fingers shorter than everybody else's. "There's the thief," shrieked Mufasa, leaping high into the air and waving his spear. "Take him, feed him to the lions." The thief promptly forgot that the ring protected him and fell to his knees and cried and pleaded. He took off the ring from the hand he had been hiding, and gave it to the king, and cried some more and begged for mercy. and the king was so pleased to have his ring back and to be the most powerful king in Africa once more that he allowed the royal lions to go without their breakfast. The thief was set free. Free, that is, apart from the small punishment. He had to run around the city 3 times, and the children chased him all the way around, all 3 times, and they found quite a different use for their sticks. "Now, how did you manage that?" asked the king as he was recovering in his private chamber, and Mufasa stood watching bag and bag of gold being brought from the king's treasury. "Your magic must be even stronger than the magic of the ring." And he said, "Not so. I told you it would not need magic. All it needed was one very guilty man. He knew so well he was the thief, he really believed his stick had grown 3 fingers in length, so he cut off that length and thought no one would notice." Mufasa tied up the bags of gold in a spare sheepskin, and he had the foresight to bring with him, and bowed once to the king. "There's more than one kind of magic, Your Majesty." So that was kind of an interesting story. So let me know in the comments if you want to see these kind of stories in the future. Now, I'll try and finish this out by chatting. We shall see. As far as like this ground and stuff, it really doesn't look that bad as is. I'm using this golden rod just to blend it a little bit more, just make it a little more even, make the where the darker colors are a little less harsh. You can do this with as many pencils as you'd like. You could add in even darker tones to this. You could add in some reddish tones. There's a lot you could do here, but basically I'm just kind of blending it out. But it is far faster than if I was blending this out and it was done with the pencil, because I would have to be a lot more careful about my blending. Look how fast I am blending. I know I'm sped up, but even if you were to slow this down to regular speed, you would see I'm just like not spending a tremendous amount of time and not really covering every single thing, because our ground isn't going to be uniformly one color. But goldenrod is one of my favorite Prismacolor pencils. I really like this color. I just think it's a really nice neutral, well, it's not really neutral. I mean, it's definitely more of a, they say it's a yellow. I think of it more as a tan, but I just think it really goes well with browns and helps like as a blender. Now I'm not using too much cream here, because as you'll see, as you add cream to this, it will actually kind of pop off the paper. If you were adding cream to just the goldenrod, it would not pop off the paper like it does when you add it to the Inktense. So just keep that in mind a little bit. We're tidying up. That's all we're doing at this point. So just kind of filling in, adding a little vibrancy. If I would have done another round with Inktense, it probably would have been even more vibrant. And that was part of my choice making here. But, you can use any colored pencils. It doesn't have to be Prisma. So if you don't have Prisma, just use the pinks that you have. Use the yellows that you have. It's going to turn out fine. So once again, just kind of tidying. Oh my goodness. So last week, was it? There was like the blue moon, which, only comes around once in a blue moon. I don't know if that was what affected me, but I have been just very, like, not that motivated and just kind of little bit on the tired side. But even more than that, it's just more about, I don't know, just wanting to do nothing. Do you ever get like that? Is it because it's the change of the seasons? I mean, I know I have a lot that's been going on, and that could be part of it for sure. But even when I've had some downtime, instead of doing what I normally do, like coloring for you all or doing another video, I just like want to play a game on, like, a mindless game on my phone. Or just watch a stupid show on TV. I don't even want to watch a movie I care about. Like, I want to watch something either that I've seen or is like just like a program that you can just only like half watch. You know what I'm talking about, like the CSIs or House or that kind of like sometimes I like to watch cooking shows, like where they compete with each other. You want to know why? Because I don't really care. It's something on in the background. I'm kind of watching it. I'm about half interested. If I miss something, like, I'm not losing any sleep, right? But I've just really been struggling with that lately, not really wanting to take on, like, really watching, quote unquote, a movie or even coloring. I mean, it just, I don't know, just haven't felt like doing anything. So let me know if you guys are suffering from that, or if you're saying, geez, Wendy, don't be a lazy bum. Or if you're just saying, yeah, I feel like that, but I don't have that luxury. I've, some of the days I haven't had that luxury either, but some of the days that I did, even when I knew I should have been, working on the channel or cleaning my house or cooking a better meal for the evening instead of waiting for the last minute and trying to figure out dinner, those kind of things. Waiting until you almost have too much laundry to fit in the washer. Yeah, I haven't done that at all. No, I haven't. It does make it hard. My laundry's downstairs, so I have to rely on my husband, which, being a UPS driver, he gets home late, and then, I mean, I can switch out the laundry. It's just getting it up and down the stairs. I wasn't supposed to be walking on it, so I was supposed to be using crutches, and so that was kind of difficult. Now I can walk on my foot a little bit, so now I feel like maybe I could attempt to walk down the stairs with the basket. It's still a little cumbersome because you have this big old luggy boot on while you're trying to walk down the stairs, so I don't need to break my other leg. But anyway, why did I pick pink for this vase? So I picked pink because I'm balancing out my picture a little bit. I've got a lot of pink in the flowers over on the left-hand side. I've got a pretty intense pink over on the right-hand side with her outfit and the sleeping bag. So I wanted to bring just a little more pink into this side. And then I just felt like it kind of reminded me like this tan, like being maybe almost like a leather around it or twine, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the look I was going for here. So anyway, sometimes, I know these aren't very profound as to why I make decisions, but I do know that sometimes I've watched videos from people and I've wondered certain things, and the artists that I was watching made assumptions that, well, certainly they know that basic thing. And it's like, no, that's why I'm watching the video, because I don't even know that basic thing, right? Some of you, of course, know these things that have been coloring for a while. Or maybe sometimes someone will say something and you can view it in a different light. Oh, that's why I do that. Or, oh, that makes sense. And you can apply it to another page. So, it's a fine line to try and walk as to not, I don't want to be condescending, like I know something that you don't know. I don't want it to feel like that, but I also don't want it to be like, let me just dive into the middle and assume that some of the more basic things. And when maybe, when you first start out, of course you don't. I didn't know all these things, and I'm still learning. So, as far as color choices, I have to say most of my color choices are very intuitive. I can work with a palette, but I just feel like sometimes I get ideas from the palette, but then I walk away from the palette. Maybe it was this page. So I was like, what goes good with like pink and green, right? Options for pink and green palettes. And sometimes it depends on how you Google, they'll only give you pink and green in your palette. And then, sometimes it's a completely different green than you were using that makes the difference. So this is more of a limey green. And then I've got the olive greens too, the little darker greens. But I can usually take, when I'm done, I can look at my picture and I can tell you how it works on the color wheel. But I don't necessarily go to a color wheel and go, oh, it says I should use, red, yellow, orange, green, and blue. That it says this is the colors I should use. I can show you on the color wheel why it works. But anyway, I try and explain to you my thoughts when I'm choosing a color. Why did I pick this color? Why did I pick that color? Like, for example, in this balloon, I decided to pull in that orange because I have very sparing orange. But I have peach, which is, kind of a lightened orange, right? And so, anyway, for me, I do try and balance my pages and incorporate colors. If I've used a color somewhere, I try and use it somewhere else. Unless it is the main focal point of the page and you want it to stand alone. For example, let's say your picture is a big open background and just two big flowers. Okay, then you're probably just going to have your focal point colors. But when you have busier scenes, you want to limit your palette and you want to balance it. So it would look kind of odd if I had the pink flowers over here and then maybe not odd, that's not a good word to use, but it wouldn't feel as balanced to me if I had the pink flowers on the elephant, but then I didn't have any pink on the sleeping bag or the balloon or her shirt. If I had made those, let's say, blue or something. Now, that is a stylistic choice. You could do something like that because then it really drives all the focus to your elephant. So it depends on how you want people to view your page. Do you want them to barely notice the page on the right and just lock on to your elephant? Or do you want more of a balanced feel? And neither is wrong. Just know that those decisions are what you all know. You're scrolling through Instagram and that picture hits and you're like, wow. You just like stop and you're like, wow. Stop and really ask yourself what you like about the picture. Is it the big value tones, like the darks versus the lights? Sometimes it's that. A lot of times it's that. Most of them will have very limited palettes. I've seen some beautiful pictures that had larger palettes, but it is a little more rare for me that one will stop me in my tracks. So just know that is a choice that I made to put the pinks in the other side of the page. But I could have left them out, and that would have driven more of the focus to the elephant. So just a thought, just throwing that out. So once again, I'm just kind of tidying things up, blending things out. I'm not being real shady in this tree. Like I'm not, you could make it a little more 3D if you used all three of the green colors, but I'm not too concerned about that. To me, whimsical art can have solid blocks of color and be okay. You don't have to make everything dimensional. Okay, so here's where I add the white. This is just a white Posca. It's 1 millimeter. You could use a thinner one if you want. You can use a thicker one. Now, where you add white is very much a personal choice. I like adding it to whimsical pages. So like, to me, you know, I don't know. There's just pages that I feel like it works with better. And this is one of them. So I'm going to add a fair amount of white. I'm going to add some white, and then I'm going to add a few more details here and there, and then I'm going to find more places where I should have white. So I'm adding the white here just to make this look a little more snow-capped. Now, I liked the look of the white Prisma over it. It definitely softened it a lot. And I don't always use a white pen here, but I felt like I really wanted it boldly white, right? As opposed to, I wanted the blue in the clouds to kind of stand out, and I'm covering up the lines here. And those dots are your choice, whether or not you want to cover those up. So the clouds too, I'm going around, and on the outside, I'm covering up all the lines just to make them look just more like, I don't know, poofy. Yeah, it's an official word, poofy. Now, you may not like that look. You can definitely see the blue in the middle, and, you know, the Posca pen definitely leaves like very strong white marks, and you may decide that you don't like that, and that's certainly a choice. Sorry, I'm just a little off camera here, but it wasn't long. I just basically covered that little cloud and then had the forethought to zoom out. Now, one of the things I'm going to do with these little bags is I'm not going to leave them white. I'm actually going to go over them with I think a gray in the end. That is a choice too. If you like the looks of them white, you can just leave them white. You want to let your Posca completely dry if you decide you want to go over it with your colored pencil. When you go over it with your colored pencil, you want to go very light. And I personally find that I prefer a little bit of a blunter picture or point, not picture, because then I'm not scraping as much. So most of the time I like more of a sharper tip. But I decided I didn't like the look of that around my flowers. So I just kind of wiped it away quickly. And you can see that most of it did, it lightened it, but it didn't leave that bright white. So that is kind of the nice thing about these acrylic markers, is that you do have just a little bit of a time to play. Now at this point, you can decide you just want the splashes to be white. I decided to go ahead and put the marks in the actual water and like the lines. And, once again, it's kind of a stylistic thought. I kind of like looking at it now. It looks good with just the splashes in white. So you wouldn't have to do as much, but I think I do. I'm not looking at the finished right now, but I think I do go back and put the lines in. So, yeah, here I am. I'm kind of putting the lines in. But I kind of like the looks of just the splashes. And I want to cover a lot of these white lines. And hopefully by the time I'm done, I've kind of covered some of that green up a little bit too, made it a little less obvious. I could have colored my water darker. I could have made it a little more turquoise, and that's another way that we could have covered it. But honestly, I think at this point, we've kind of covered it fairly well. And there's so much on this page to look at, and your eye, I think, is naturally drawn to the elephant. And so when I glance down at the water, I'm glancing down. I'm not like staring at it like there's something there. Now, the one thing I'll caution you that I do all the time, because I'm like squirrel, is that I tend to move on and I start like, oh, I'll go here and then I'll go there with the white. You need to let this dry. And if you don't let it dry for a second, you will smear it. It doesn't take long, but it definitely takes longer than I sometimes give it. So I encourage you, if you're right-handed, to work on the left hand, the top of the page, work your way across. That's the best way to do it to ensure that you're not smearing it. But I have smeared many, many things because I'm impatient. And I know for those of you that watch the channel, this is shocking to hear that I'm impatient. But, I just tend to be like, oh, I need to put white here. I need to, and I go where my thought takes me. And sometimes that leads me astray a little bit. Now here I wanted to put a few rocks in. See right here? If I would have immediately went to the rocks, I could have had some trouble. But I had waited long enough, so luckily I didn't smear it all. I'm just adding a little shadows to my rocks and some of these smaller pebbles, filling them in and actually creating some rocks, even where there weren't any. I like the look of that. Just blending them out a little bit. At this point, you know, I'm just looking around like, okay, what else do I need to do? I decided I wanted to do all these clouds so that the tips were white. And I like the look of this because below it, it kind of looks like the mountains peeking out of clouds is kind of the look I'm going for here. And I think it works really well. If you look at the one on the right versus the one on the left, you do lose a little bit. If you wanted to go back in with a little bit more blue, either that same shade or you could have just deepened it just a little bit, that would look nice too. I don't think I did that. I just, you know, whited out all the black lines. See, in here I just go over those. See how that just like, it just takes that brightness out of the white, and yet it's still a nice light color. So I like that. And that you can definitely use that to your advantage on a lot of things. Especially if you like colored over something. Now, it's not simple. You wouldn't want to color like, let's say like a big area with your Posca pen and then try and color it with a colored pencil, because it's not the smoothest. But you can touch up little errors, or like maybe I think I colored over some of those with the brown, and so the white really allowed me to bring that back. Now these little flowers here, I went ahead and I put the white. Now I'm going in with the green for the actual branches or whatever, or what are they? Not branches, stems. And then I'm going to come back in with some color. And I think this must be in real time. I'm not going to change it at this point. We're invested. But just know this is probably more like real time. Most of the video is in 2x speed. I do that so that people can watch it, and then if they want to watch it in real time, they can just mute me and watch it in real time. Now, I chose not to do a lot of white marks like on the truck. I think I do a couple, but not many. I just don't think it needed it a lot. I don't, you know, once again, just a decision. But I kind of like the dots on the road. It just makes it look, I don't know, less like a gray nothing. I really dislike how this turned out. This one thing you have to be careful about, like with Inktense, is once it's down, I mean, it's down. So, so that was kind of my only option. I think in the end it worked out fine. That's by far not the biggest highlight on this page, so not too concerned. So here I'm putting some highlights in on my lantern, and I think this makes it look more like it's glowing a little bit, and just a few shiny bits like on the metal. I think that kind of adds something to it. I didn't really want it to be a lot darker. I wanted this eyeball to be a little darker, so I used a Tombow marker and just filled it in. You could use a colored pencil. I sometimes out of laziness I'll do it, but I definitely prefer the look of a markered eye versus a colored pencil eye. I just think it looks a little more natural or less, I don't know. I think your white highlights look better on marker, which is a big part of the eye, is the highlights. The eye can really bring out a page. I decided to put a few random white dots and put some white dots in these flowers. Now see where my hand's going to go over it and smear. Pretty sure there's at least one spot that I smear, but you just got to be really careful. But I think the white dots are fun, but you definitely don't have to do, see, like you shouldn't put your hand right over the things you just worked on. But I appreciate you guys sticking with me in this longer video. I appreciate you watching my channel. Please do the YouTubey things like, subscribe, leave me a comment, share it with your friends, you know, any of those things. Also know that you can share it with yourself. There's a save button where you can save it to watch later, or you can create like a list. And I find that that's nice to be able to get back to a video where I've started watching it and, you know, maybe you get through half of the color along and you want to pick it up later. I find that it will always take me back to the exact place I left off. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.